Welcome everybody to this live Q&A with our superstar, Mr. Gunther Weisshaar from TECAN. Welcome, Gunther.
Thank you, welcome, and welcome from my side to all the participants.
Thank you very much. Just before we start, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping points. You don't need to have your videos on for this, so feel free to kind of listen in listen-only mode. This is going to be, you know, a very open conversation between myself and Gunther, talking about how to position yourself, not as a policeman, but more as a partner to the business. He's going to be sharing some of his experiences, some of his advice, some of his key learnings to try to kind of enable you all to become more effective in your roles as quality and regulatory professionals. So we're really excited to have him in there, and we've got Karen from my team who is monitoring the chat. So if you happen to have questions, some of you have already pre-registered your questions, we will jump to them at the end, but equally if you have questions that are coming up kind of as we're speaking, feel free to just drop it into the chat to Karen, and what we will do is ask them at the end. If you're live and still in the chat, we will try our best to jump to you live, to unmute you so you can actually ask your question live. Yeah, that's it. So I hope you're all ready. So as I say, you don't all need your videos on for this. And if you set the status to speaker view, it should allow you to make sure that obviously you're seeing our superstar speaker and not all the other 50 people in the room. So let's get started. Gunther, tell me a little bit about yourself. So maybe, you know, share with us who you are and what you do and what makes you qualified to speak on this particular topic.
Yes, so thank you first for having me and sharing some of my experience I have been gaining over the last, I would say, 35 plus years in quality regulatory. So I'm here at TECAN. I'm the Senior VP Quality Regulatory for almost 18 years now. I have been in medical device companies, Boston Scientific, Schneider Europe, Elemed, Class 2, Class 3 devices. And I have been doing a long journey over the last 35 years in this area. And I think the purpose of our discussion today is what are the mistakes I've done in my last 35 plus years in this area, and what can I share with the team, and what probably should people do not to do the same mistakes as I have done over the last 35 years. And yeah, I mean, I have been undergoing hundreds of audits. I have been hosting several FDA inspections. I think, you know, there's nothing which can surprise me anymore, and there is nothing where I'm getting nervous, I think, in the meantime.
So let's kind of rewind. So how did you get into quality regulatory in the first place?
So I have been doing my education as an airplane engineer. I started with 17 years and doing my education at the German military. Afterwards, I moved to, at that time, it was called BBC, Brown Boveri Company, which is today ABB. And then I've been starting in the quality control department. I moved from there to many other companies, and I think the important part was when I moved to a mold maker company where we have done molds for medical device parts, syringes, herpes protectors, a lot of things which are used in the laboratories. This was the first contact to the medical device business. I was there for more than 10 years. And after that, I moved to Boston Scientific, to Schneider Europe, and get in touch with, you know, Class 2, Class 3 medical devices. So, I mean, I have been going through quality control, quality engineering, quality management, total quality management. I mean, all what you can hear and learn about quality. So, you know, a few things. I think it's good to start really from the bottom until you are in the position where I am today, to really see and know what quality and regulatory people have to deal with all day, to understand and how can you do it better. And I think this is the good part with my journey, you know, I started really from the bottom in a quality control department until I'm now, you know, for more than 18 or almost 18 years, the Senior VP Quality Regulatory.
So how would you define the role of what a quality or regulatory professional does in a company?
So, I mean, when I started in quality regulatory, I mean, there was a kind of joke, you know, all the people you couldn't use in other departments, they were put in quality. So this was at, you know, 30 years ago. And I think, you know, this perception has changed a lot over the years. And I mean, today, quality regulatory, they need a huge background, a huge skill set. And I would say until, or even today, many companies, they focus on quality regulatory. They need to have the skills in certain regulations, whether it's IVDD, whether it's 1345, whether it's complaint handling, whatever. And I mean, this is okay for the big companies. They have enough people, enough resources to have for each of these skills or for each of these areas, their own experts. In other companies, you need to have a much bigger skill. But I think the expectation of having the skills in quality regulatory, this is a given. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody's hiring somebody who has no clue about 1345 or ISO 9001, you know, in a medical device business. But I think the evolvement and the move from being just an expert in quality and regulatory towards being a business enabler, this is, I think, the big step a lot of companies today have not made so far. And for me, a quality regulatory person, beside the basic skills on quality regulatory, needs to be, as I said, a business enabler, a networker, a promoter. I once did a presentation on what is a great quality regulatory person. And I said, you know, he needs to have skills like a scientist, because you have to understand the application your instrument and your product is used. You have to have skills like a lawyer, because you have to understand the regulation and translate it into a language where your counterpartners understand it. You have to be like a politician, you know, during audits, you know, talk a lot, but don't say anything, right? You have to be like a priest, you know, everybody's talking, you know, oh, there's an FDA inspection, nobody in the organization, oh no, they are never coming, you know, like a priest, you know, oh, you know, there's a heaven, there's this and there's that. And this is the skill set, I think, you know, quality people also have to have, you know, like a priest, to convince the people that this is happening at a certain point in time, this is going to happen. Eh? You have to be like a technician, because you have to understand the function of your instrument. So the skill set of a quality regulatory person is huge. So you need to have a lot of skills. And I think the move from technical skills to social skills, emotional intelligence, this is the key to make today good quality regulatory person successful.
It's a really interesting point that you made, because, you know, I think we've launched Elemed's Mentoring Academy, and the first session that we had was on emotional intelligence, and something actually that the trainer said was, you know, what people do really on in their career is they invest a lot of money and they spend a lot of time developing certain technical skills and competencies. Yes. But then when you get to that mid-level, you know, either you're just expected to know stuff, or when you do go on these training courses, they're technical, they're not focused on that soft skill piece. And actually, in order to really progress in your career and kind of, you know, get to that next level up, it's not just like what's the technical knowledge you have, but so often it's how do you influence people, how do you communicate with people, can you speak to a CEO and talk about, you know, business matters and be able to hold that conversation, or are you really focused in the details? And that's something that, you know, when we speak with senior leaders, especially business owners and CEOs that don't have a background in quality regulatory, those are the things that they value much more than, you know, the specific detailed technical expertise. So something that you spoke about as well, and something that obviously we've touched on, is this business enabler piece. But what does it mean to be a business enabler? Can you give me some concrete examples on actually what a business enabler looks like?
Yeah, I mean, a business enabler for me is first to get to get the trust, you have to give something to the organization. And for me, it's you have your internal and external customers. And if your internal and external customer who have trust in you, then you can give them something back. And I mean, I just, I have a few examples on business enabler. In most of the companies, quality regulatory, the salespeople, they don't leave them in front of any customer because they see them as a business destroyer, right? Because if they talk about quality regulatory and everything we have to do, nobody wants to let them in front of the customer. So why is it? Because it seems that the quality regulatory people, they don't speak the same language as a customer wants to hear. And this is for me a very important point. You need to get to the point where you can communicate the advantages of a compliant management system, and I'm not purposely not talking quality system, management system that helps to show the competitive advantage. And I mean, I tell you, we had a lot of projects at TECAN with, OM projects with highly regulated diagnostic companies. And our salespeople, they invited us, quality regulatory, to the first meetings to sell our quality regulatory skills and competencies to the customer because, I mean, face it, I mean, building an instrument, if you have not a unique technology, there are so many companies in the field, they can do it. Hardware, software, everybody can do it. But, what is the differentiator? What is your unique selling point? And I mean, we are at the point at TECAN where our salespeople actively selling our quality and regulatory skills. And this is because we gained their trust, because we brought in some projects from big diagnostic companies, or we contributed to a big portion that we got the projects. And once you have done it, they want to use your capabilities and the opportunities more and more and more. And this is the way how, I mean, today, as I said, we are doing presentations maybe more than salespeople doing presentations.
So, okay, so just rewinding a little bit. So let's talk about quality and regulatory. What would you say is the reputation of a typical quality regulatory department within a company?
They are, I mean, the title of our conversation calls it out. They are policemen. They are not seen as very, very supportive in many companies. They always looked at, I mean, I give you an example. I mean, I have stories for all of the questions mostly. So when I do an interview, a hiring interview, I always ask the same question. Why is it in most of the companies the quality and regulatory has such a bad reputation? And very often I get the answer from the people, yeah, Günther, they don't understand what we are doing. They cannot understand, they don't understand the regulation. And then I always say, you know what, this is the wrong answer. Because if they don't understand what we do, then we have an issue. It's not what we think, it's what they perceive. And obviously they perceive us as not very, very, very communicative. They don't perceive us as very supportive. So it starts with you. And I mean, the situation I have today at TECAN was not always as it is. So the journey we have done was, and maybe this is also a recommendation, you have to reflect yourself. If you want to move to the next level, you have first to reflect yourself and put the mirror in front of you. And everybody knows it. When he looks in the morning in the mirror, it's not always nice, right? And it's the same when you put the mirror in front of you in quality regulatory. So we have done a survey at TECAN and we put the mirror in front of us asking how people perceive quality and regulatory. And we got some feedback which was not really nice. And I think it starts from there that you really start with you, with your quality organization and check out how are you perceived in the organization and take it from there.
What about, for example, I know some of the people that have joined today, not everybody is heading up a department or has the ability to run such an initiative. So they can't say, hey, I'm not the person that makes a decision on, shall we run a survey internally? what can, you know, an individual single contributor type of employee be doing in order to have an understanding as to the reputation and as to what they can actually be doing to impact what that reputation might be?
Identify your stakeholders. And then, you know, in any relationship, whether it's at home with your husband or with your wife, it's the same. If you want to get something, you have to give something. So you have to convince your internal customer and your stakeholders that they can benefit from your work, they can benefit from you as a person. And every communication needs a bridge. And the bridge is, you know, you have to establish a personal relationship with your stakeholders. Otherwise, you know, you can 10 times tell the truth, they don't even interest or act or answer your question because there's no relationship. So my strategy over the past 35 years, whatever, is you need to build up relationship. And this is also one of the skills I mentioned before. Quality regulatory people, they need to be networkers. They have to establish a network with your internal and external customers, right? And to you know, to have this reputation, it's not just important to have this reputation internally with your stakeholders. You need also to build up the network to your external customers. And I mean, I can tell you all my quality regulatory people, or most of them, they have a great network with our customers. So if your boss, which might question your work and question the budget you are asking for next year, you know, if he or she gets the feedback from his customers that, you know, oh, hey, you have a great quality department, you have skilled people, you have motivated people, he will make more budget available for you if he gets the feedback from your customers. So networking, communication, presentation, this is important. And this is the skill shift we talked before, you know, purely quality regulatory people, you know, this is not enough anymore.
Mm. And so you spoke a little bit about kind of, and this is something I always speak about, even in recruitment, right? Always give people something, you know, don't ask for stuff, actually just like give stuff. And then eventually you build a relationship and then that's how it works, right? What is it that quality or regulatory professionals internally, what do they have that other people want? That could be information, it could be insights, but specifically, what could, you know, our listeners go out there and already be offering internally in order to start to build up these relationships with their partners?
I mean, there are two levels for me. There's the personal level, you know, and most of the people, you know, in the companies, they say, oh, he's working since 10 years here, I know this guy, or I know this guy. This is not true. Maybe you know the function, but you don't know the person behind the function. So what I am doing is also, you know, you have to give something, you know, from your person, you know, to connect to your stakeholders on the personal level. The second one is on the professional level, you know, how are we perceived? You know, we say yes or no. This is not possible because in the ISO 13485 or in the QARA 21 CFR 20, you know, this is this article and you are not allowed to do it. So this is the approach we had over the past. The approach, which I think, you know, can give you much more or better reputation is if you have a challenge in your organization on a certain topic in quality regulatory, and the people come to you, don't say, you know, this is the way you have to do it. Think about, go back maybe to some of your colleagues and think what are the 2 or 3 options you could address this challenge and this question. And if you go back to your stakeholder which has asked you this question and say, look, I went back and I have been thinking about, and I can give you 3 opportunities and 3 options you could go for. And I have checked it, you know, from the risk point of view and compliance point of view, which I think, you know, these 3 options could work. And you can choose which option you like to have. And I tell you, they are so pleased because, you know, hey, he gives me three potential solutions. I can address it. And once he has been telling you, oh, this is the way I want to go, help him to execute on it. And then you are perceived as solution-oriented, as supportive, and as a business partner. If you just say yes or no, I mean, come on. Who wants to go to somebody where you think, oh, the chance to get a yes is 50-50. Who wants to go to these people, right? So this is the way how we are going to do it, and we have implemented it. And I can tell you, people love it.
That's like gold, what you've just said. And I just want to kind of like dig into it a little bit more, because just in case people kind of missed what you just said. Sorry about the lighting, by the way. I'm currently looking at a beautiful sea view, but I have the sun right in my face. So what I want to dig into really is that idea of problem solving, because that's huge, right? And that's the whole topic of this piece that we're doing today. How not to be a policeman. Policemen will say yes or no, or they will just simply check and say, you know, that's good or that's bad. But actually, being a business partner, a business enabler, is all about being able to problem solve. And it's about, as you said, not only saying yes or no, but actually saying, here are your options, and coming up with 3 or 4 options, and actually presenting them to your stakeholders. And that way, as you said, they're coming across as much more supportive, and actually, you know, helping the business achieve their goals. When you say help them execute, what do you mean by that?
So coming back to these different options, you know, when you're in an organization, yes and no organization, and police organization, quality regulatory police, you can be sure that the people, the business, whether it's operations, R&D, they are not going proactively to share with you information. They are not sharing with you certain, you know, things they think they are non-compliant. They make a big bow around quality regulatory because they don't trust in you, and they see, you know, if I approach them, you know, the chance to get a no is 50%. So why should I share this information with quality regulatory? Over the time, when you come up with this solution-oriented approach, you gain trust. And as you know, people who have kids at home, you know, a trust-based relationship is the most effective way to gain information. And this is the same in the company. So once you have found the approach solution-oriented, you will see that you will be overwhelmed with information, where people come to you, to the quality regulatory organization, asking for help, asking for support, because they've experienced you, you know, oh, he gives me or she gives me 2 or 3 options, I can choose. And for me, it's clear, my team, I tell my team, it's not you to say yes or no. You provide solutions and the business decides. And now coming back to your question on how does it look like on the execution. I give you an example. When we do corporate audits, we go to our sites and we do audits. We have a list with all the findings, if there are findings, but they are perfect, they are not findings. But if there are surprisingly some findings, then we are going to sit together with the subject matter expert, and we come up with 2 or 3 solutions we think we could address this deficiency. And then we decide together with the subject matter expert, oh, I want to take this solution. Then we sit together and see, oh, what is the effort to do it, money-wise, hour-wise? We put behind the cost, which will be associated to this one. We will put on what is it, high, medium, low risk, prioritization. And then once we have seen how to do it, we help them locally to change an SOP or to do a supplier evaluation or whatever needed with our support. And since we are doing it, we can go to all the TECAN sites. We are not seen as Big Brother from the headquarters is watching you. We are seen as part of their local team, even we are coming from the headquarters. And I think it's a complete different way of working. And my people here, they are so pleased and they enjoy working in quality regulatory.
Yeah, because it all comes, as you said, like this managing the reputation, it comes down to essentially trust. And in order to get trust, you need to build a relationship. In order to build a relationship, you need to pick up the phone and actually give a little bit of yourself, you know, share a little bit of info about yourself so you can actually get to know the person, you know, also that you're working with. And also give them solutions, because a really important point that you said was by giving them options, right? Not only have you given them options and given them solutions, but if they choose one of them and it works out and it generates a certain result, now you've got proof that, you know, the way that you work has helped them. And so, you know, you build on that, and then, you know, you slowly start to transition the way that you work from policeman to partner, which is obviously the focus of today. Okay, so coming back to kind of like common mistakes, because obviously you've been in the industry, you know, many years, and you said that, you know, you've recruited a lot of people, you've worked in all different kind of businesses. What would you say is some of the other common mistakes QARA professionals make in terms of partnering with businesses, or their positioning with the business?
So I would say I would divide it in two things. So one is what mistakes companies are doing. So I think it's important, and I've seen in one of the questions or some of the questions how to get top management aware of quality regulatory. I think quality regulatory needs to report to the top management level. This is important, because if there is not the support from the top level, this is mission impossible to get our interest and our you know, philosophy established in the company and our culture, the culture of quality. So it needs to come from top. What people in our functions very often, you know, the mistake they are doing, I mean, I have done so many audits and I've done so many interviews, and what is a typical old-fashioned quality person, regulatory person behavior? They are victims, very often victims. We are so poor. I have to deal with all the problems of the company, and this is so bad. And I mean, who wants to work with a victim, right? I mean, I understand victim behavior, victim talk is nice, because, you know, shared pain is half pain. But I mean, who wants to work with victims? If you are a victim, you have a lot of victims around you. But if you have a positive attitude, and you are, you know, I mean, if I go to a salesperson, or if I go to a customer, and I go in, you know, with a lot of energy, and I'm, you know, I mean, you can hear me after 35 years doing quality regulatory. I mean, I'm so convinced what I'm doing is beneficial for the industry, for our patients, for our customers, for our company. If you go in with this mindset, then I think there's no question anymore that people don't trust you. They don't believe in you. But if you walk around in a company, these victims, quality regulatory victims, I can tell you, I told my team, if there's anybody who sees him or herself as a victim, look for a new job. I want to have passionate people, motivated people, which are, you know, so shining when they're walking through the company. And this is what the switch again from being, you know, a bookkeeper, police, to a business enabler, to a partner, to a trusted partner. And this is, I mean, again, stop victim talks. And if you are not happy with your position, look for somebody else.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I was listening to this podcast yesterday that kind of spoke a little bit about, you know, this solution oriented approach, or taking more ownership over, you know, being able to have impact. And something that I found really interesting was, you know, instead of saying like, I can't do that, or that's not possible, it's a statement, right? Instead of saying the statement, and also you have to be conscious of what is the self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying outside to people? What is in your mind? How are you framing it? But instead of making a statement, because it makes your brain stop really working, turn it into a question. So instead of saying, okay, it's not possible, turn it into, how can it be possible, right? And by asking the question, even if it's to yourself, you reframe it and you get your brain thinking straight away in solutions, rather than being the blocking point. So I thought that was really interesting. And so I personally have taken the approach of like really being conscious of what I'm saying to myself and what words come out of my mouth when I'm speaking with clients or candidates, and trying to reframe that, you know, it's not possible, or how can I make it possible? Or we can't do that, how can we deliver that solution? And I found that really, really interesting. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to kind of, so we've spoken about positioning, we've spoken about solutions, we've spoken about how to say no. But what I'd love to understand a little bit more is with regards to skill set and the future, and what you think, based on your experience and where the industry is going, what do you think the skill set of a quality regulatory professional of the future is going to look like?
So asking the question with whom quality regulatory people have to deal with. So they have to deal with all, I would say, management level in the company, starting from operation, from R&D, top management, customers, suppliers. So they have to communicate with all of these people. And in German it's called stufengerechte Kommunikation. Means you have to communicate your needs in a way that the level you are talking to understands it. So for me, the communication skills, presentation skills, networking, this is so important. And why over the past there have been so many misunderstandings between quality regulatory, or nobody understands me, right? Because it's a way of how you communicate it. And I mean, there are some simple examples like validation. Why do we have to do so a lot of effort on validation? Because it's in the standard blah blah blah. This is, of course, it's in, but there's a business reason why. Because you can either spend a lot of money on testing, or you do a validation and can reduce your amount of testing, which saves you a lot of money, right? Traceability is another example. Why do we have to do all this work on traceability? It's easy, if you don't have traceability, you have to recall all your products. If you have your traceability, you can limit it to a minimum and you can save a lot of money. So there's most of the time a business reason behind. And if you start to talk in the business language and translate really the regulations we all have to comply to in a way that the business understands it, what is the benefit to the business, then I think this is one which is very important on the regulation side. On the other side also, I mean, quality regulatory, a lot of people, they do a great work, but very often, quality regulatory people, they don't talk about the great work they are doing. So do good things and talk about, sell what you are doing, promote your group, promote your teams. And I mean, again, promotion comes not just from you internally, build up the relationship to your customers. And your boss, your CEO will probably get positive feedback about your organization by your customers. And then automatically the reputation of your quality regulatory group will increase. And they see you more and more as a big or an important party or a part of the entire business and the organization. And I mean, I give you some examples. I mean, I can here, for example, we have a quality regulatory brochure. We give the quality regulatory brochure to our customers. It's a nice brochure, like a product brochure. Or we are doing a monthly or quarterly newsletter to internally. We do a yearly quality regulatory annual report we send to our customers. So do good things, talk about, sell what you are doing, because what you are doing is so important to the patients, to the customers, to your business, and talk about.
But what would you say to the people now that are listening thinking, okay, but I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert, and I'm not a salesperson. Like, why should I go out and sell myself? That's not who I am. I like to maybe be a bit more quiet and, not so much kind of selling hard, that sometimes is the feedback that I get from people. What would you say to people that are sitting here listening to this, thinking that right now?
I mean, how can you sell yourself? One part is, I mean, you cannot come up with a brochure and telling everybody I'm so great if you have not proven that you are great. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot comes also from what we have been talking before. If the people realize, the business realize you are a business partner, you are solution oriented, then it's promotion by itself, right? You promote your work, you promote yourself. This is one part. And the other part is, of course, a lot of people, as you mentioned, they are introverted. They are not really, I'm not going to tell everybody how great I am. I mean, this is not what I meant. But, share with other people as well the work you are doing. And it's not necessarily just promotion, because a lot of people in your organization, they don't know what you are doing. They have no clue about what you are doing. And I mean, I think the understanding will proportionally increase as more information they get about what you are doing. And this is very often the case. I mean, even here at TECAN, sometimes, I don't know what regulatory is doing. So why not So if they understand that regulatory, for example, is doing the registration for their products, that they are able to sell it in certain countries. Oh yeah, now. So again, it's a combination of different things, you know, promote yourself, go out, tell the people what you are doing. Maybe you can share doing presentation at when you have these town hall meetings, whatever, share what you have done, you know, what are the things quality is doing, regulatory is doing, some success stories. Success stories motivates your team, and it brings also trust from your internal, external stakeholders. So there are many things you can do.
Another thing that I, you know, speaking with people, something I found really interesting, especially obviously knowing your business, is convincing senior leadership teams of certain initiatives and investing money, right? So the most recent huge one was obviously MDR. So there were some people that I would speak to that would say, hey, my leadership team, you know, would just they just wouldn't invest. They just didn't see the point, or I couldn't convince them, you know. But on the other hand, I saw businesses like yours where you started really, really early on actually preparing for IVDR. Yeah. And so kind of like, what's the difference in approach? You know, why would some people be successful in selling that concept or that project to the leadership team and others maybe not so?
I mean, I could now be a little bit provocative and say, you know, there's no reason you can explain why this is important, but this is a joke. No, I mean, you know, I mean, we all deal now with MDR and with IVDR. Everybody in this industry is dealing with it. And I mean, we have to a little bit think about and recognize why it came up, the MDR and the IVDR. I mean, the IVDR and the IVDD, the current IVDD is older than 20 years, right? We have had a few or a lot of bad examples in Europe where they have been able to bring products on the market, you know, the breast implants, you know, the bone implants. So there were some really bad examples. On the other hand, over the last 20 years, there were so many innovations in our industry, like, you know, personalized medicine, new generation sequencing, point of care, regenerative medicine, and this has not been covered in the new IVDR or in the new in the IVDD, which is now covered in the new IVDR. And I think it was needed to come up with new regulation. Whether the extent of the changes now which came up is sufficient or not, I question it, because I think they have tried to cover everything which they have not done over the last 20, 25 years. However, you know, to convince the top management that this is needed, I mean, it's very easy. If you are in the diagnostic business and you don't do it, you are out of business. So you are not going to sell anything anymore. And, you know, the CEOs and the top managers, they think in, you know, dollars and euros and market shares. So this is their thinking. And you have to explain them in their language, in their terms, what is the consequence if you don't do it, and what is the consequence if you do it? Because with the new regulations, there will be plenty of companies, they will not survive it, because they are still in the kind of Dornröschenschlaf, so they are still sleeping and wait and watch what other companies are doing. And it's a great opportunity, on the other hand, if you do it right, and if you are ready, IVDR or MDR ready, then I think you can gain a lot of shares from today's competitors, because they will not survive it. So, I mean, you know, again, they are thinking in dollars and euros, and if you can really tell them, look, if we are doing it here, we will gain shares from our today's competitors, this name and that name, because they will not survive it. And I'm sure, and I'm very, very convinced that depending on which industry, 30 to 40% of the smaller companies, they will not survive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the point, right? And just listening to you naturally do it in some of the examples that you did earlier, you spoke about money, because business leaders, what they want to know is, what does that mean in terms of bottom line, right? So in terms of money, what does that mean? In terms of market share, what does that mean? And very often, you know, when I'm speaking with regulatory quality professionals, you know, they talk a lot about compliance and being compliant to the regulations and doing things because the regulations say that you have to. But when you're communicating outside of the department or outside of the function, or you're trying to communicate something to a senior leader, it's exactly as you said, you need to link it to revenue. You need to link it to money.
Communication, as we talked before.
Client. Yeah.
Talking their language.
Yeah, what's in it for them, right? The whiffing, we call it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did a presentation at the ALA conference we talked before. You know, I mean, you have to adapt your presentation to the audience. And in this conference, there were CEOs, there were CFOs. I mean, why shall I talk on details on the idea? I'm talking on the implication the idea has on the industry. I'm talking on, you know, what does it cost? It's 70% more documentation you generate, which has an impact on cost. But on the other hand, you can gain market shares. So, you know, this is the language you have to talk. If you talk to a regulatory expert, there's a complete different talk and a different level of talk. So communication skills is so important.
Really interesting. All right. So what can people do right now after this, after listening to this discussion? What can they do immediately to impact the perception of going from policeman to partner?
Solution oriented. So try, put them next time when you are approached by somebody in your organization and there's a challenge in quality regulatory. Try to think about what different options do I have to come up with 2 or 3 solutions, and go back to the person who has been asking this question and tell him, look, those are the options. Choose one. I will help you to implement it. One thing. Another point is self-reflection. Again, the typical answer is, you know, they don't understand what we do. Try to get even verbal feedback from your stakeholders. What do you think? Am I supportive? Is my department supportive to your work? And then take their feedback. And I can tell you the feedback you will get, this is almost everywhere the same. Not one voice, because, you know, I call it opinion hoppers from the organization. They ask one quality person, they don't get the right answer, they go to the next and to the next and to the next until they get the right answer. So if you have not aligned your answers, you know, then they perceive you as not one voice. And then, you know, oh, quality, you can ask this person or that person, you get always a different answer. So one voice is something. Then demanding and not be solution oriented is another feedback you might get, right? So this is something you have to work on. How, again, with the solution oriented approach, give a few options to the business. So I think those are the easy things you can do, even if you are not in the top management, if you are not leading a department. Try to come up with a few solutions, and you will see the difference. If the people gain more trust in you, they will come more and more to you to share some challenges they have. And it's always the same, of course. There are situations, there is just a yes or no, because, you know, this is our job, quality regulatory. But I would say 80 to 90%, there are options. And I tell the organization, as sooner you approach us in quality regulatory, as higher is the chance to find a right option and a solution to your topic and to your challenge. If you confront us at the very end, there's not much space left to negotiate anything. But if you involve us at the very beginning, we can come up with a nice solution to help you. And this is also a message you have to convey in your organization. People should come very early with a challenge to you, then you can come up with a solution, and not at the very end, because then there's not much room for interpretation left.
So what about, like, if somebody's looking for a job, right, and they're interviewing at different companies from a candidate perspective, how can somebody determine whether this company truly has a quality culture? What questions could they be asking, or what should they be paying attention to determine? I mean,
the first thing I'm always asking, and I was approached also by other companies, you know, where is quality regulatory reporting to? Oh, reporting to the head operations. No way. So this is, I mean, you see already from the org chart. And then talking to the people, I mean, usually when you are in the second round and you have talks, you talk to depending on the position you are applying for, you talk to managers. And then in the interviews, you can ask, you know, what is your quality perception in the company? What is the culture in your company? Is it a topic in your leadership meetings? I mean, look, if quality regulatory is not a topic in the leadership meetings or in their management board meetings, it seems not to be important, right? I mean, there are a lot of questions you can ask to the managers, or do you have a lot of quality topics to be addressed? Why you hire me? Is there a specific topic you want to be addressed? And then you will see what's going on.
Yeah, it's important to also be asking these questions in interviews, right? Not only being the one receiving the questions, but ask them back, but also ask good open questions. Too many people ask like really basic questions in interviews. And if you ask a really good open question, you find out so much about the company. So Gunther, thank you so much. I want to jump to a couple of questions. So we've had a few that have come in when people were registering, and I feel that some of these, we hopefully have already answered in the discussion. But one that came through from Shah Shiku, he said, I would like to find out when to draw the line between policeman and partner. So because obviously if you're too much of a policeman, it's in one way, but if you go too much on the other side, what could potentially be the impact? Could it be negative? So he's asking, how do you draw the line between policeman and partner?
So, I mean, when you come up with the solution, they are all risk-based. And when I talk risk-based, there is compliance risk and there is safety risk. If there is any challenge or anything where we might be pushed to go into a safety risk, I have to say there's no way. This is for me the clear borderline, no discussion, no way. I will not agree or accept any compromise which affects the safety of our products. If it comes to compliance, of course, everybody needs to be compliant. But, also here in many companies, a few people, they shoot for 120% compliance, right? And this is exactly what contributes to the bad reputation. So I'm shooting for 80-90% compliance. And if I shoot for this 80-90%, and there's a gray zone in this 20%, I'm always thinking, when there is a custom coming in or any authority or any auditor, what is my argumentation story to explain the 10%, this gray area to a customer? But again, my borderline is safety, no compromise on safety. And here again, if you gain the trust by your stakeholders, they come early to you and you can find a solution that it doesn't come to the point where you have to decide whether it's safety relevant or not, because you have a solution before. So safety, no go.
So thanks for that question, Charles. So we have another interesting question from Lena Ramirez, and she says, so how to put salespeople on board? In other words, how can you awaken the regulatory awareness inside of them?
To the service people?
Sales.
Salespeople. I mean, again, what the name itself, sales, they want to sell. I mean, they sell everything they can. You have to give them, I would say, a clear framework, what they are allowed to sell. And as soon they realize that they can sell more with your support, you have them on board. So, and again, in our industry, salespeople often see quality regulatory as a kind of business disruptor. But I can tell you with a lot of examples, when we have been involved in sales talks and sales presentations, and we gave the feedback, our input, again, in the language, the audience is in, like salespeople, managers, you have to adapt the language. And we have been brought our arguments. I can tell you the opposite. So the customer is highly appreciating the inputs and our concerns, because, I mean, if your customer is in trouble with FD or with any authority, you are not going to sell anything, because they have first to solve their issues they have. So if you explain them that we are interested to that he's successful and then we are successful. And a lot of customers told, oh, hey, I'm so thankful for all the insights you gave me on this regulation, on quality regulatory, and they like it. And if your salespeople realize that the customer really appreciate your feedback, then you have it on board. So, I mean, again, if they realize that they can benefit from you, you have it on board. You have them on board. It's not always easy. And I mean, I can tell you, some salespeople are very creative, but then if even with your all engagement and all your support you give them, they are still going their old patterns or have their old patterns, then this is the reason why usually you should report to the top management, and they have then to tell clearly, look, this is the borderline, and if you not adhere to this framework, then we have a serious issue.
So I think it's really important, and this is something that's obviously come really strongly through this conversation, to be able to adapt essentially your positioning depending on who you're talking to. So what your message is. If it's a business person, talk about sales. If it's a salesperson, talk about sales and ability to sell your products in certain markets. We have a question from Sickerin. I'm going to unmute you, Sickerin, so that you can ask it live to Gunther, and it's more about product development being the stakeholder. So Sickerin, I'm just going to unmute you now. Hopefully it will work.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sickerin, a quality engineer from Nobel Biocare at the moment. Yeah, so thank you for giving me a chance for live question. So yeah, just before the lunch break, I just got the ask from the product development engineer that our document is not compliant, but it should be okay because it's just class 1 device. What would you answer this question?
I mean, if it's class 1 device, whether it's a class 1, class 2, class 3, the basic requirements are the same. The extent of the different requirements might be different. So I don't know what is it now, what is not compliant, but the question is, you know, if there are clear requirements, you have to fulfill certain needs of the regulation, then it's not the right argument, it's just a class 2. And you cannot sell it to any auditor or any authority that you're not going to do it. The question is how to do it. And the difference between the classification is, I mean, whether it's validation, whether it's traceability, whether it's verification, it's always a matter of the extent of the different requirements. And class 1 devices, of course, have less effort to do on validation verification because the essential design output and the critical specification are less. So I'm not clear what is really not compliant to give you now a sufficient answer on this topic. But basically, if there's a clear requirement out of the regulations, you have to have a validation report, a verification report, or whatever, then there's no way around. So you have to do it. But I think that the point is how to explain him why you need it. And just refer to the standard is probably not enough. To explain why it's needed might be the key to get him understanding why we have to have the verification report, or why we have to have traceability, or why we have to have a supply evaluation. So, you know, I don't know exactly what is not done in this documentation.
Thank you, Sickerin, for asking your question, and thank you, Gunther, for giving your insights on that. We have time for one more question. So if anybody wants to go live, just drop a message in the chat and just write me, and we will unmute you so you can ask your question live to Gunther. Did anyone have anything? I have been looking at the sign-up questions, and a lot of them are around how can we communicate to be seen as a valuable partner, or how can you communicate to senior management? And I feel like we have already covered these topics. So if anyone's got any final questions that they want to ask, let us know in the chat. Otherwise, I will leave the final words with you, Gunther. Have you got anything else, any other words of wisdom or words of advice that you would like to share?
Wisdom, you know, I'm not yet 80. I mean, I'm older than you might be, but yeah, I think, you know, if you come to the point where I think we have been coming at TECAN, you can be much more relaxed because you know the people coming with an issue to you, and you don't have to be concerned that they hide things. And this gives you a much easier life. And I mean, how ask yourself how many sleepless nights you had because before an audit or because the quality issue. And if you come to the point, as I think I'm completely, I would say 95% completely relaxed. And this is what makes my team and me, you know, so enjoying what we are doing, because we are relaxed, we don't are afraid. And, you know, I mean, every audit, for me, it's like, you know, a game. I like it. You know, it's like, you know, I'm looking for the next audit. And if you are at this point, you know, then you like and love what you do.
Because it's so powerful what quality and regulatory do, and in the end, you know, companies would not be able to function without a strong QARA department, right? So I want to thank you very much for giving us an hour of your time and sharing all your insights and advice, and I really hope it's been useful for the people listening in. Do please share your feedback with us, with myself, with Karen, on LinkedIn, and I would like to wrap up and say I wish you all a very good day, and thank you very much once again, Gunther. I've learned a lot just by listening into this, so I'm hopeful that everybody else has as well. Thank you very much, everyone, and take care. Have a good day.